Here we are in the region referred to as Sumer. Now, Sumer is the region, and I hesitate to say nation or nation state because it's not the same as our modern identification of it. Instead, Sumer is the region, also referred to as Sumeria, the region in which there was a common language, a common culture, a common background or origin story, if you want to think of it. And Sumer was made up of a dozen of independent city-states. And each of these city-states controlled not only the city, but its surrounding location. We're going back in time to 3,400 BCE, and the area, Sumeria, thrived for over 1,000 years and comes to an end around 2,332 BCE. We'll look at the fall of Sumeria. These city-states hold power over their countryside and their people. They will oftentimes be dedicated to a specific god in the Sumerian religion. And we're going to be jumping into a few of these major cities. First is Uruk, which is right here. You see it? Right there. Let's go to Uruk. Let's look at the slide beyond the image first. See in the top left, I've put our period style, Ancient Near Eastern. I've put more specifically, this is Sumerian, okay? The title of the artwork is the White Temple. It is located in the city of Uruk, which is now modern-day Warqa in modern-day Iraq. And then the dates of this temple are 3,200 to 3,000 BCE. The White Temple, as it was referred to, is dedicated to Anu, A-N-U. Anu is a sky god, and this is not unusual considering that most of the religious deities of the Sumerians had some kind of control over natural or physical phenomenon, such as the sky, earth. They were seen as acts of, or as gods, part of nature, acting as guardians of these various spheres. And Anu was the god of the sky. The area we're looking at is a massive piece of rubble. Now you might think it's a mountain and that the temple used to be on top of this mountain. No, 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 no. This is all made of mud brick. The mud brick platform that we're looking at here once was the risers for a great temple on top. The temple has been destroyed, and the monument that remains is the rubble of the clay brick man-built mountain which raised that temple closer to the sky. Here, Uruk. Here is a map of the ancient city of Uruk. The dark black lines are the city walls, and the white lines are the road systems that loop in and around. There were two major temples in Uruk. The White Temple is the one that we're looking at, and then there was a larger complex to a more important or more powerful god for the people of Uruk, Inanna or Inanna. And we're going to look at her complex next. It's interesting to note that we're looking at a space that has walls, a city with walls, meaning that there had to have been some reason to keep people out. We didn't see this in Çatalhöyük, in our Neolithic area. So we're seeing a change in human behavior that has brought about changes in settlements. Now we have walls. The roads, they don't follow any type of grid pattern. Instead, they are fairly organic. They probably follow the shape or the modulations of the landscape itself around different marshes or rises or dips in the city or within the landscape itself. So while it might seem chaotic to us, it probably makes perfect sense to move around the city in this roundabout way. The term I want to introduce you to next is what we refer to as a ziggurat. It is the platform in which a temple will rest. So I've put here ziggurat and the definition. So ziggurat, a monumental platform for a temple found in ancient Mesopotamian architecture. So the White Temple rested on top of the ziggurat. It is requiring us to use a lot of our imagination because the temple is now gone and the ziggurat has been destroyed. However, based on people's recordings or their journal entries, their travel entries, the temple would have been made of wood, and the mud brick platform, the ziggurat, would have been merely a base. There's nothing inside of this space. It's not a pyramid. Let me emphasize that again. A ziggurat is not a pyramid. A pyramid is a burial spot. There are chambers, there are ways to manipulate, and there's treasure inside. Not a ziggurat. A ziggurat is simply a platform meant to elevate a temple. I'm emphasizing this because I don't want you ever to call a ziggurat a pyramid or a pyramid a ziggurat. Okay? Okay. Here's an artist restoration of what we think was the temple and ziggurat. Now you might be thinking, the temple was made of wood? Ugh, how lame. Oh, look at this one. This one's great. You might be thinking, ugh, how lame. Why would that be made out of wood and not something like stone? All right. Okay, good question. Let's think about resources. This area, while it is extremely fertile, it doesn't have a lot of trees. Trees mean timber. Trees and timber, that is the requirement for building a wood structure. So they couldn't grow trees in this region, so they had to import the timber. You know, imported goods, luxury items. Are those expensive? Yeah, really expensive. So the fact that the temple was made of wood, of timber, that is crazy expensive, and therefore it is appropriate to be the temple to Anu. I want you to look at this as well, because you see that there's one staircase. Now, it includes these people here to give you a sense of scale. It's a massive platform, and the temple would have been a large space on top. But I don't want you to think that just anybody is allowed into the temple. The Sumerian word for temple is also translated to God's apartment. It is a living space. The temple is a home away from the heavens, and it is not a place for us to hang out and meet with the gods. The gods are these mighty, powerful beings, and if you are not properly trained, you are not allowed inside. Therefore, the only people allowed inside these temples are the highly trained priests and priestesses. That's it. So it isn't like a modern day church where people are welcomed into a space to congregate and worship. These are spaces for the gods and for the few people who have been trained to take care of these spaces for the gods. The reasoning behind this is we don't want to insult them. We don't want to insult Anu, the sky god, because if you were to do something in his temple to make him mad, he might not bring any more rain. And then we all die. Do you get the stakes? There's major stakes involved here. So these complexes around the temples are manned or are maintained by the priests and priestess, very specific, limited individuals. We, the regular people, we live in the city outside of this temple complex. We don't go inside and check it out. Based on the descriptions of it, it must have been extremely impressive. Here we are looking at another map of the space. The temple would have had various rooms, storage rooms for treasure. It would have had a living space for the god to come and visit. The temple would have been provided with food daily, and depending on the god, there might even be a statue of the god within it that would have been bathed and dressed every day, maintained by the priests and priestess. Just outside the temple would have been an altar placed on top of the ziggurat platform. This is where sacrifices would have been given. This is where ceremonial gifts would have been given. Any kind of performance for the god would have culminated here at the altar. Again, not for you, just for the highly trained priests and priestess. Here is an artist rendering of what we believe the temple would have looked like. The temple, the apartment for the god, would have been a sacred space for them to visit us. And if they found favor in this temple, if they liked it here, then they would show favor on us. And they would grant us with any kind of powers that they performed. The White Temple was referred to as such because the clay bricks, the mud bricks, were painted in white, a whitewash, and it created this fantastic contrast between the golden sands and the lush green fields of the land, and then the beautiful, bright, long blue sky. And it would have created this extremely gleaming, majestic space in the center of the town. It's also going back to our concept of a platform as a way to rise those of importance above us. We talked about this last week. We talked about this with the cows, the bulls in Lascaux. We talked about this with the bison. We talked about how we elevate those who are in greater power above us. And here we see that the temple, the sacred space for the god, has been lifted off of the ground. It has been risen off of the dirty, sullied soil in which we occupy. It is placed somewhere between heaven and earth. So it's interesting to notice this human behavior, this human pattern of raising these things up above us. Keep this in mind, because throughout the semester, we're going to see the continued use of platforms to raise up sacred spaces or sacred people. Did you write that down? Platforms, like ziggurats, to rise up or raise up sacred places or sacred people. We're going to see it again and again and again.